Rev up your engines!
Paul Shin says, hi Scotty, Jeep Wranglers, high resale values. I mean, the vehicle's reliable. What would you say between a 4Runner and a Wrangler? I wouldn't even compare them. The 4Runners, they can run forever, and the Jeeps are rolling piles of junk. Don't ever believe that resale nonsense. I got a whole video on that. Now, when I was a young mechanic, yeah, the resale books, like the Kelly Blue Book, had pretty realistic values in it. The guy's name was Kelly, and that's what he did for a living, and he kept up with the values of cars and put them in the books. Well, ages ago, that company was bought out, and now all those companies that give valuations, do a little research and you'll find that they're almost all owned by these huge corporations that one of their big businesses is selling used cars. So of course, they're going to tell you the value of the cars is much higher in the real world. Jeep Wranglers, nobody wants to buy them who understands vehicles, knows how they fall apart. So they get these books, and a lot of it has to do with false advertising too. I mean, the other day I was looking up stuff on the internet just out of my own curiosity, and one of these big things said they picked the Jeep as one of the 10 best cars of the year. Everybody knows since Fiat and Chrysler merged, the quality's been going downhill. But they pay a lot of money advertising to say stuff is good that actually isn't. You know, if you want the truth, ask somebody like me, who spent 52 years fixing this stuff. I did a thing once about plastic crap on cars, how I hated all the plastic crap and it broke. One guy wrote on the comments, he said, Scotty, I'm a furnace mechanic. I fix furnaces. And he said, I couldn't believe it when they started putting plastic parts in these furnaces that would melt over time. So it's not just cars. But if you want to know about some particular detail in society today, ask the guy who fixes them for a living about the truth. Don't ask people who sell them. Moneyosity 1 says, I'm planning to get a new car or truck. I want to drive it 1,000,000 miles. What should I buy for a truck or SUV? All right, basically, I'm assuming you're talking about brand new, and if you are, get a Toyota Tacoma pickup. Those things can run forever. And if you don't mind, get a standard transmission because they last the absolute longest with the least maintenance. Their automatics aren't bad, they're decent automatics, but if you want to get 1,000,000 miles, most vehicles that go 1,000,000 miles, if they still have the original engine and transmission, have standard transmissions, because there's very few automatic transmissions, even the Toyotas, that'll last more than, say, 300,000-400,000 miles. Yeah, you get your money's worth out of them going that far, but if you want to go 1,000,000 miles, you'd want to get a standard transmission one, how they are, and if you really wanted to go 1,000,000 miles with the least maintenance possible, you'd be best to get the 4-cylinder engine and not the V6, because it has less moving parts, so there's less things that break. They have less horsepower, of course, but that means there's less strain on the rest of the vehicle, too. The more horsepower an engine has, the more it strains the rest of the vehicle by all that power. Jobin 3 Yellow says, Scotty, I got an '07 Ford Edge with 150,000 miles. I'm about to trade it for an '02 Mustang with 50,000 miles and a V6. Is this a good move? You never know what a used car is like. You'd want to pay a mechanic to check it out, like I always say. But a lot of guys buy Mustangs and they rag the heck out of them. Sports car, they drive like maniacs. But that is a V6 engine. The guys that generally rag Mustangs out are doing it with the V8s, or they're getting the later model EcoBoost ones with the 4-cylinders that put out 300-something horsepower. Plain old V6, my tax accountant just bought one, and she's, getting older. She just wanted to have a nice-looking Mustang, so she got it with a V6, the cheapest one she could buy, and she loves it. She doesn't drive like a maniac. If you can find the owner of a car, talk to the guy or woman and see how they drove. They're just normal people that drive like don't drive like maniacs. Go ahead, because a lot of times the people that buy V6s, they don't drive like maniacs. You say the ones that do, they're going to get a V8, or they're going to get a turbocharged one, and those are very hard to buy used because people generally always beat the heck out of them when they have the big V8 engine. It might not be a bad car, but still, have a mechanic check it out before you buy it. Shane the Killer says, Scotty, I'm looking for advice on a used car. I'm looking at a 2015 Kia Optima SX Turbo. There are a few in my area. All right. No, look someplace else. Kias and Hyundais, Korean cars. Kia and Hyundai are pretty much the same company now. They're decent vehicles. If you buy one new, and it's not turbocharged, and drive conservatively, and generally you can get 100,000 miles of reasonably trouble-free driving. You go to the turbos, and you're talking about buying a 5-year-old used one with a certain amount of miles on it. They have a lot more wear with the turbo, and if it's a used Korean car with the turbo, the engines don't hold up. They just don't. So, if I were you, I wouldn't buy one. Chief Pontiac says, I'm headed to Florida in a few weeks on vacation. I thought I'd look around for a used front-wheel drive 2015 or 16 Rev 4. Which would you recommend between the two? I go for the 2015 before they started to make some changes. It's used, unless you get in a time machine and go back to 2015. So you got to pay a mechanic like me to check it out with our fancy tools. We don't miss anything with the tools that we have these days. If you're going to check it out yourself first, which is always the smart one, because I've had some people just keep bringing me car after car. I said, didn't you road test it? No. I said, always road test a car you're thinking about buying before. If you see it's a clunker, and then don't waste paying me. Get rid of the things that are obviously wrong, then bring one that seems pretty good to you. It's a smart move getting the front wheel drive one. You know, most people don't really need all-wheel drive. It adds a lot of complexity to the vehicle. Now, the Toyota makes pretty good all-wheel drives in those RAV4s, but like anything else, if you get a simpler front-wheel drive one, and if you're going to keep that thing for 10, 15 years, hundreds of thousands of miles, you're going to have less maintenance problems than if you have an all-wheel drive. Plus, you're going to burn a lot more gas with the all-wheel drive. They get worse gas mileage. You got 4 wheels driving, extra friction, they just get worse gas mileage. Plus, the weight of the 4-wheel drive system weighs more. That's a smart move. I'd say 2015 out of that choice. Amador says, Scotty, there's a 2010 Fusion for $4,500, 6-speed standard, kind of hard to find, 86,000 miles, 1 owner. I liked the Fusions in the beginning. That's when Ford and Volvo had some conglomeration going on. And there's Volvo technology that's in their suspension, so they ride quite well. They're really good cars. And it is very hard to find standard transmissions in those. You like it, and the mechanic says it's okay, don't trust anybody. Always have a mechanic check it out. It can be a very good car, because with the later model Fusions, not particularly that one, but the later model Fusions, they had a lot of problems with their automatic transmissions. You're not dealing with any of that because it's a standard transmission. And since they're so hard to find, you probably won't be able to talk them down much from the 4,500. You always ask, say offer them 4, see what they'll take. But they're so hard to find that would be a very good car. You might be able to keep that car for decades if you take care of it, because they were good cars. The main problem was later the transmissions had problems. Class action suit that was against Ford for their transmission failures and those. Ford extended the warranty a little bit, but still, it's not giving you a brand new transmission for nothing. With the standard transmission, that Fusion could be a really good vehicle. Next question is the truth. Morning, Scott. I got no Force Scion XA with 134,500 miles. When I let off the brakes, I hear a whistle-like sound coming from under the hood. I've seen that a lot, and sometimes it's a very simple thing. You have power brakes. The power brakes have this giant vacuum booster. There's a big hose that comes off of it that goes to the intake of the engine. In case there's a problem with the engine stalling so you don't lose power brakes, where that hose goes into the brake booster, there's a little valve. It's a one-way check valve. So if the engine dies, instead of all the vacuum pressure going back into the engine because the engine's not sucking anymore, it stops. A lot of times those check valves just go bad. You can buy them for like $15-20. Look around. And what happens is when you take your foot off, then if they get a little worn, you hear a whistling sound because that little valve's making a whistling sound. I see it a lot. You want to pray that it's not the actual booster itself, because if they get a leak, there's a diaphragm inside and they can make noises, and they cost a fortune on a Toyota product. To get a brand new brake booster, you could get a rebuilt one if you wanted. But a lot of times it's just that stupid little check valve. So check the check valve. Gee, I'm a comic, I don't even know it there. DeMarcus Jones says, I got a 98 Lincoln Navigator. I replaced the alternate battery. It won't hold the charge. And the larger pigtail clips are broken where you plug it into the alternator. When I plug it in, the light comes on the dashboard. It goes off when I unplug it. What's wrong? Well, you just answered your own question. Your connectors are useless. Those things go bad so often on those. They take a lot of power. A lot of times they start to melt. You can go to any decent auto parts store or to a Ford dealer, and they make a repair kit that has the entire connector assembly that plugs onto the alternator, and then the wires coming off. And then what you do is you cut your broken pigtail connectors off, and then you solder each wire to them. They're color coordinated, so like green goes to green, black goes to black. And I've got a whole video on how to fix wiring where you twist them around, then you solder them together, and then you have heat shrink tubing that you put over, and then you can heat it up with a hair dryer or a match, and it melts right on. Or if you're really good at taping, say you played hockey and you like taping your hockey sticks, you can use electrical tapes after you solder it all and wire them all and tape them real tight. But shrink tubing works fine. You go to any auto parts store and buy the shrink tubing for like $10, and then you can shrink it on so water doesn't get in it. Do that. They make repair kits for those all over the place because it's a notorious problem with those as they age. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.